Okay, so in today's lesson, we're going to be talking about how to write and solve addition and subtraction equations. So example 1 says, George had some plastic figures. After he bought 7 more figures, he had 25. How many plastic figures did George have before he bought more? So to be able to solve this, we first need to write this as an equation. And number 1, in the first sentence, when it says George had some plastic figures, remember that word some when we're writing expressions. We don't know what that is. So we're going to put a variable here. We can put anything A through Z. Since we're doing figurines, I'm going to put F. So we don't know how many he had to start with. But then it says, so we have that sum, we have F, amount of figurines. We have some amount. And then he bought 7 more. So we're thinking about what operation would 7 more be. And that's going to be addition. So we can say F plus 7, and after that 7 more, we know he has 25. So I can put my equal sign equals 25. So what this sentence is saying is that he had some amount, then he bought 7 more, and together those equal 25. We know together we have 25. So how do we solve this? How do we find F? Now, some of you guys might just put in your head and think about, well, what do I have to add to 7 to get to 25? Which you can do. The other way is to think about what operation is being used here. If we're saying plus 7, we're using addition. And to solve for this, to get F by itself, to cancel out this plus 7, we're going to do the opposite of addition. I call this undoing the operation. So when we undo the operation, we perform its opposite. So the opposite of plus 7 would be to subtract 7. And remember from our previous video, when we're talking about equality, we have to do the same to both sides of the equation. So if I subtract 7 from the left side, I have to subtract 7 from the right side. And so if you do 7 minus 7, that equals 0, so this cancels out right here. So I no longer have 7. All I have left is F. And now I have F equals 25 minus 7. So all we have to do to solve for F is do 25 minus 7, which is 18. So before George bought that 7 more, he originally had 18 figurines. So whenever we see addition, we're going to subtract to do the opposite to undo that operation. And then if we see the opposite, if we see subtraction to undo, to perform the opposite, we're going to do addition. So let's try another one. Example 2, Cabrina had some markers. And remember, we see that word sum. We don't know what that is. We can use any variable for sum. I'm going to do M because I don't know what, or actually it says to use N down here, so I'm going to use N. So Cabrina had some markers. After she bought 12 more, she had 16. How many markers did Cabrina have? And it says let N represent the numbers of markers she had this start. So to be able to solve for this, we first need to write our equation. So this is looks very similar to number 1. So we have N amount of markers after she bought 12 more. So if we have 12 more, what operation would be using here for more? Using addition. So we're going to add 12 more, and together she has 16. So I'm going to say N plus 12 equals 16. Now, the operation I'm using, again, is addition. So to undo this operation, to perform its opposite, I'm going to subtract. So I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides, because remember, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. These 12s cancel out because 12 minus 12 is just 0. So I'm left with N equals 16 minus 12, which is 4. So she had 4 markers at the start. So thinking about what is the opposite of addition. How can I undo that operation? I'm going to subtract to make sure whatever you're doing to the one side of the equation, you want to do to the other. And our whole point here is that we want to be able to get our n, our variable, all by itself so that we can solve for it. All right, example 3. Clive is 19 years younger than Josh. Clive is 34. Write and solve a subtraction equation to find Josh's age. So we know that Clive is 19 years younger than Josh, but we don't know how old Josh is. So I'm just going to use a variable here, which it tells us to do y. So I know Josh is y years old, and I know Clive is 19 years younger. If he's 19 years younger, I'm going to be subtracting or taking away 19 years to figure out how old he is. And it says, since Clive is 19 years younger and Clive is 34. And just a hint, you guys, whenever you see this word is, that's where we can put that equal sign. So is means equal. Whenever you see is, you know that you're going to put an equal sign there. So y minus 19 equals 34. So this time our operation, we have a minus. So to undo the operation, the opposite of minus is to add. So I'm going to add 19 to both sides. These 19s cancel out, and I have y by itself, which is what I want to isolate. I want to be able to solve for what y is. And now I have 34 plus 19, which is 53. So that means that Josh is 53 years old. Now, one mistake that I see some people do with these equations is they might try to subtract 34 instead of the 19. And you guys always want to undo the operation to what's connected to the variable. So it's always about what's connected to the variable because we're trying to isolate that variable. We're trying to get that variable by itself. So whatever is connected to the variable, that's the operation that you're going to be undoing. All right, last example for today. Example 4, Andy had some baseball cards. Again, that word some, hint, we're going to use a variable for that. We can use anything. I'm going to put X. Andy had some amount of baseball cards. After he bought 12 more, he had 48. How many cards did Andy have at the start? So what would my equation here be? He had some amount of cards. He buys 12 more, and then after he buys 12 more, he has 48. So I have my X. I'm starting with my X amount. I don't know what I'm starting with. I'm doing 12 more, so I'm adding 12, and together I'm going to have 48 there. So now, same thing. What operation is being used? Addition. How do I undo that? I want to subtract. I want to get X by itself, so I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides. These 12s cancel out because positive 12 minus 12 is 0. So I'm going to have X equals 48 minus 12, and I'm going to have 36. So Andy started with 36 cards at the beginning.